On DC Music Rocks, we're shining a spotlight on the great songs, artists, and incredible people behind the DC region's local music scene. J-Dubs makes pop R&B music with hip-hop sensibilities. He describes it by saying, imagine Nick Jonas and Kalani had a baby, Drake was his godfather, and Kanye was his high school bully. It's funny how high school bullies can be so influential.
You know?
It really is. On stage, he's a one-man band. He's recreating his tracks on the fly, live looping bass lines, guitar riffs, beats, grooves, and vocal harmonies all together. And it's production meets performance in a way that's interactive, it's improvisational, and of course, it's freaking impressive. So, I first came across J-Dubs when I started the show. God, it's been at least a year and a half or more since I first stumbled across your music. But ever since, it was Cinderella was the track that I'm not going to lie, I totally had that one on repeat for at least a couple weeks. So I've been a fanboy for a while, so it's a treat for me to now have you here with me on the show. So thanks for being here, man.
It's good to be here.
This is cool. So now talk about, if you're a one-man band, then what's it like when you perform? Talk about that.
All right, so I think it's misleading because I have my laptop on stage and like a bunch of gear like underneath my laptop, so it looks like I'm a DJ. But what I'm doing is all the songs or everything that you hear in the songs that you hear with mine, I'm just like reproducing on the fly. And so with a song like Wait and See, like I'll hit a button and it starts like the clock, if you will. And so you hear the ticking in the background. And I'll play the keys and I'll loop them, and then the keys will loop, and then I'll like sing the background harmonies, and then those will loop. Then I'll play the bass line and all the little like the kick and the snare and all that stuff, and get them programmed where I want them. But I play them all live, like on stage, and you're watching me do that. And then I start the song, and then I'll like turn certain things on and off.
So I think many people have seen like either guitarists or other people with the
like
looping
Ed Sheeran.
pedals. So it's like the looping pedals kind of look they might have seen before, but for you it's a laptop and more of a DJ looking setup, but same concept. You're looping and stuff. That's cool, man. So how did you start doing that?
Well, I put out my first single probably like 4 years ago, and I've been playing with bands and I've been playing with DJs, and it's just like, I think it's difficult to organize things with people. But I can just leave it at that. It's difficult to organize things with people. So if I do it all myself, I don't have to organize with people. If I do it all myself, then I don't, because I was like paying for recording space, and people weren't showing up. I was paying for like rehearsal space, people weren't showing up. I was like buying pizza for rehearsal, and like that's extra pizza for me, so I guess it's a win-win. But like, or like
that's the one you weren't bitter about.
That's the one I wasn't bitter about. But the other stuff, or like I'd show up to shows and people were like, "Oh, like we have a show today." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm here. You're supposed to be here like an hour ago." So that was straw number one. Straw number two was I had a few like exec meetings, like A&R meetings with a few like mid-tier recording labels, and they were like, you sing good and like you rap good, but like everyone sings good and they rap good, but like you also wrote these songs, and if you can get this like musicianship across in your performances, I think like they would really, really, really hit. And I was like, how would I do that? And so I started watching a few videos online of like people doing them. A buddy of mine from New York, his name is Mike, he also goes by the band Tall Tall Trees. He's like a banjo looper, and he does like all these things I've never seen anybody do like on a banjo. Like he'll take like a violin like bow and like bow on it, and like with the effects pedals it just sounds awesome, and he'll like take a drumstick and he'll beat on it and it sounds dope. Like, and I was like, so I hit him up and asked him a few questions, and I watched a few videos and started buying up some gear, like, and then last February was my first like looping performance, and it was a little rough, but like we've since like, you know, it was in the beta testing, and now I think we're in version 1, like 1.0 at the moment. I bought up some new stuff. Hopefully version 2.0 will be coming soon. But
got it. There it is. And most of that is contingent. Do you find it's more contingent on the gear, or is it more on... Is it really you and the amount you've practiced, or is it the gear, or all the above?
I think it's probably... like the tools are only as good as the person who's using the tools. So I think there are a few things here and there that make things a little easier, but there isn't anything I think I could buy gear-wise that would make, like, it still takes, like, hours and hours of practice because there's so much stuff going on. Like, it's almost like you're playing for 4 people, 5 people, 6 people sometimes, depending on the song. Like, it's a lot going on. But the learning curve is not as steep because all the sounds that I already made in the song itself like already exist. So like it's not like I have to. It's not like I'm not covering my own song per se. You know, like all the stuff is already there. I just have to play it correctly.
Just have to get timed right, and launched right, and all that stuff. Now, where does the name come from?
So J-Dubs is probably 50% like what my friends called me in high school. Or like J-Dub, JK-Dub. Like I was, I went to high school in the early 2000s, and that was when like the J-Lo phase was like rampant, and so you would like take the first letter of someone's name, and then however you decided to pronounce their last name, that's what you would run with. In college, people called me Juicy J, which is a rapper in a group called 36 Mafia. So like I couldn't. Okay,
I was gonna say Juicy J. I know that. All right, gotcha.
But it wasn't something I could go by, and so that's what I ended up defaulting to, J-Dubs. And it was just with a U before I like started really taking it seriously. Then my mom calls me one day trying to like boot up Netflix on our Xbox, and my Xbox gamer tag had it spelled with a V. Like it's been that way for as long as I've had an Xbox gamer tag. And I was like, oh, and she like heard me like gasp on the phone. And I was like, she's like, what do you, and I was like, it's just a little bit of an epiphany that I had. And that's kind of what it's been since 2014, 2013 maybe.
So it was your mom booting up Netflix on the
Xbox. Yeah.
On the Xbox that gave you your artist name?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's like an amazing artist story. I hear so many great. I love the story behind artist names because sometimes they're so funny, and that one's hilarious. Like,
yeah,
thanks, Mom, for the artist name. That's oh God, that's amazing.
And like the girl who did the logo, like made it seem like we put so much more thought into it. She sent me like maybe three different like mock-ups, and I was like, that one, this one works, and it looks like nice and clean and professional. Fits in a lot of places.
And and if you don't know, so when you spell it, it's JDV instead of a U. So if you're thinking J-Dub, it's JDVBBS.
Yes.
That's J-Dubs. There we go. And so describe your connection to the DC. You're in Arlington now. You mentioned earlier you moved to Arlington. You've lived all over the place. What's your DC? What parts of DC are you connected to? I
probably connect myself best to Fairfax County because like that's where I grew up. Like that's where I can drive around without my GPS.
I guess that's really a status nowadays. It's like, where can you drive where you know the roads so well that you don't need GPS?
Don't need GPS. Like Reston, Virginia, like for sure.
Okay.
It's probably what I connect to best. I lived in DC for a little bit. Like I lived in.
Now, what schools did you go to out there?
I went to South Lakes High School, and I went to Herndon High School, which is kind of a like.
Oh,
they're like their rivals. Okay. So I went to my older brother went to South Lakes for all 4 years. My younger brother went to Herndon for all 4 years. But we moved in the middle of my high school tenure, and my mom was like, "I'm not driving you to South Lakes every day. We live right down the street from Herndon High School. You're gonna finish your senior year."
Oh man!
Like it was just 1 year, so it was my senior year, and we campaigned real heavy for me to keep going to South Lakes. It did not go down that way.
Oh wow! There we go. I love it. Now, what's your earliest memory with music?
My earliest memory that is tangible. My mom used to record these like cassette tapes of us just like hanging around the house, like listening to tunes. Not necessarily like recording the tapes off the radio, but just us listening to the radio. And my earliest, I think, most tangible memory is like listening to like Onyx Slam, like da da da, let the boys be boys, and like there's a tape somewhere in our house of like me like 4 years old, like singing along with that song. And my little brother's name is Chris, and I would like sing to Crisscross a lot, and like a little call and response. So I'd like try to get him to say the lyrics with me.
What Chris? I'm about to do.
Exactly.
What,
like what it up, Chris?
Just what I was born to do. Yep. I remember.
Those are probably the two most tangible, like my first like.
Oh, that's
musical memories.
Oh, I love it, man. And now, what about you on the personal side? Outside of music, what kind of hobbies are you in your personal time? What do you do?
I am a big NBA fan.
There's a lot going on with that right now.
There's
or you
a
don't
lot.
Have a stake in it.
I'm a Chicago Bulls fan.
I see.
So like, no, not really. And we're probably going to be, I wouldn't say bottom feeders, but we're going to be like looking through the window pane of the glass through the playoffs. We're not going to be in the back where we can't see it, but like it's going to be a while.
Yep.
Until it works out in our favor. But I think it, as like a product, like there's a lot of good players, and a lot of people say that a lot of teams are stacked, this, that, and the third, but like there's a lot of good talent in the NBA. I think the NBA playoffs were fantastic to watch this year. It sucks that they're going to end in a little bit. I'm also a big tennis fan, and the French Open just started, so I spend most of my day doing that.
And do you play these sports too, or do you just watch them?
Like, in high school, I had to make a decision, and I was never really good enough at basketball for me to like even like. I probably wouldn't have played varsity basketball in high school. I got out of football really, really early. I played on the same team, on the same little league football team as Eddie Royal, who was like a receiver in the NFL. And so nobody else ever got to touch the ball ever. So I was like, nah, I'm good. I don't need to play that sport anymore. I played one organized season of it, and that's both my brothers played in high school, and I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm straight.
Yep.
If I'm gonna have to compete against that guy, it's not going down.
Yeah, it's not, I'm good, but I'm not that good.
But I'm not that good. Also, I take my Mario Karting very seriously.
Stop it.
And if you're
real?
Listening and you want smoke,
can I get in on this?
It doesn't matter what. I'm GameCube, the Double Dash.
Is
I'm
it
not as great
GameCube
at,
or is it N64?
N64, I'm the king. Ask the kids in my dorm, James Madison University.
Oh my God.
I used to run it.
I take this challenge, Jeremy. I take this challenge, man, because I used to run it when I was younger.
Cool.
As
We
well,
might have an N64 in my house.
I
know we have a Super Nintendo in my house. I'm not as good at the one on Super Nintendo.
I was gonna say,
but the latest
Super
one
Nintendo
on the Nintendo Switch, I am very, very good at it.
That's amazing. All right, so Mario Kart. Listen,
yes.
bring it when you see J-Dubs
when you see me in the streets.
He's game.
Let's do it.
A good friendly rivalry will be happening, and I'm gonna fuel this rivalry because it's on. That one and GoldenEye. Those are the two that
GoldenEye I wasn't.
I can talk some smack.
GoldenEye wasn't. I could hold my own.
Yep.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna be the first one to die, but I wasn't gonna be the last one for sure.
There we go. Oh my God, it's so good. All right, so a little bit of gaming and a little bit of sports going on.
Yeah,
I love it, man. And now, what's biggest success moment that comes to mind?
Biggest success. So I just finished a tour. I got home in April, and it was I've only been on tour maybe twice, because I don't know if the first one really counts. It was a little bit of a struggle. But the biggest success that comes to mind, performance-wise, is probably I did a show at Washington University at St. Louis. First time I'd ever been to St. Louis. I didn't get to see enough of it, but that's kind of what happens when you're on the road. And I started playing my first single ever. It's called Warpaint, and I started I started all of my sets on tour with that. And right from when the clap started going, all these college kids came and rushed the stage, and they're singing the words, and it's the first time I'd probably done maybe 5 or 6 college shows by that point on tour, and it hadn't quite happened yet. It was definitely a win over crowd, and from when the beat dropped, I was oh my gosh, I took some time from the loop station, filmed the kids, because I was people won't believe me that this is actually happening. I need to have this memory in my pocket at all times. So that's probably the biggest that's the most rock star I think I've ever felt on stage. And there were it was probably 1,000 people at the show. It was crazy. Yeah.
God, so a bunch of people you've never seen, you've never been out there, and
never
they all know your music and they know the words.
Invited a bunch of them on stage to perform with me. It was a blast.
That's awesome, man. I love that. Now, by the flip moment, then, what's the funniest moment that comes to mind for performing?
The funniest moment?
Yeah, funniest moment.
So I was doing a show, and this will probably lead in great with what we're going to play next.
Okay.
I was doing a show in Richmond with some friends in this band called Red Gold Green.
Okay.
And it was the first... I played some shows with them way back in the day, but it was the first show as JDubs. I did my own original stuff. And the show, it was maybe Wednesday or Thursday, and it was an earlier show. And my DJ, it was a kid that I knew from Richmond, but I had never really perform with him. So I gave him a J-Dub shirt so he could rep the brand, and he's DJing before the show starts. And the booker for the show, I was supposed to go on at 7:20. 7:35 comes around and people are just really starting to come in. And I was hey, what time am I supposed to be on stage? And he was oh no, that's your set. Aren't you on stage right now? That guy has a shirt that says J-Dub. So I figured, and I didn't even let him finish. I didn't even let him finish his words. Ran on stage. I was supposed to have a 20-minute set. I probably did 8 or 9 minutes. Ran on stage and I was hey, I'm gonna do half of 4 songs. Please hang out and have a blast. And so I just ripped through my set in 8 minutes, and I was super worried, super frantic, and I could see that the guy was gonna be mad, and he made it seem he was gonna cut the mic, but everyone was enjoying themselves, and so it was I took it out on a risk, and so he's after I got off stage, he's yelling at me in one ear, but my merch table was mobbed, and I'm this was the right choice, man. This was crazy. So it's always funny that you normally those things are just a mess, and it's always a cluster F, if you will. So I would rather so it normally doesn't work out where it's something you can laugh about later, but it was really, really funny, I think.
My favorite question to ask, and I always ask it, is if you could offer one piece of advice, what would it be?
If I could offer one piece of advice, it would be to write something hilarious on your tech writer.
What does that mean?
Like super detailed and specific. So a tech writer is like if you go and play a venue, they're like, hey, like what are your sound needs?
Okay.
And so I always like give them like a stage plot of like, hey, I need these 2 chords to go into my system, and like that's it. And I have like I didn't bring my own mics and everything.
Stage plot.
But I always want to know like what wireless stuff they have, like what kind of speakers they have. And what I write on mine is I want to also like if you happen to have a green room, and most people don't do this. The Howard Theater has done it for me. No one else has done this. I write, I need strawberry cheesecake, Ben & Jerry's ice cream in my green room. Because if it happens, then you know they read your whole tech writer and everything's going to sound the way that you think it's going to be sound. Yeah. But if it doesn't happen, then you never know what you're going to get into.
Yeah, this is true.
So that's the like it seems like a little bit of a snooty advice, but like stay true to it because that's how you know. That's how you know like if the promoter's going to give you the cash on the spot or like a check or like if they're going to duck you. Like every single thing that's going to go wrong, you can tell by how in depth they read your tech writer before you got there.
There you go. How prepared they are. And now one more time for those folks who want to find and follow you and what you're doing. Where do they go?
Instagram, I think, is probably where I'm most active right now. I've been trying to get the angles right on my selfies and things like that. But yeah, at JDVBBS everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I just deleted Snapchat because I think I waste my time on it. But
Fair.
www.jdubs.net, like jdubs@gmail.com. Like if you just type in JDVBBS, you will probably find me.